Before we dive into this episode, I want to give a big shout out to the sponsor of today's episode, Fleet Feet Treasure Valley. These folks aren't just about selling shoes, they're about building community and helping you find your stride, whether you're training for a 100-miler or just trying to survive your first 5K. And speaking of community, we're teaming up with Fleet Feet at the Meridian location for a live Run From the Norm podcast recording on Thursday, April 24th with the one and only Megan Lacey. It's going to be an interactive event with audience Q&A, good conversation, probably a few awkward moments for me, but hey, that's part of the fun, right? So if you're in the area, come hang out, and if you can't make it, be sure to check out the episode once it's released to the various streaming media platforms. In the meantime, stop by one of the Fleet Feet Treasure Valley locations, Meridian at the Village or Nampa out here in the 2C, and tell them Jake from Run From the Norm sent you. You'll be glad you did. Fleet Feet Treasure Valley, our goal is to help you move pain-free. Howdy, friends, and welcome to episode 21 of the Run From the Norm podcast. I'm your host, Jake Reynolds. We're doing all kinds of new things on upcoming episodes, a lot of remote chats that I'm having, and this one I called up friend Carolyn Garriott, who is a runner, mother, and true salt-of-the-earth soul of the mountains who's built a life around resilience, curiosity, and never backing down from the long climb. From her early days growing up in the Marin Headlands to her warm embrace of the beautiful rugged ridgelines of Bozeman, Montana, Carolyn's story is layered with love, loss, and the kind of hard-won strength that only shows up when life pushes back and you're forced to dig deep to find out who you really are and who you really want to be. We talk about racing in the dark, parenting through pain, and the peace of mind and the soul that you can only find out on the trail. Plus, her upcoming challenge of tackling the Arizona Monster 300-mile ultramarathon at age 62. She's living proof that it's never too late to go long, go hard, and go home changed. As a side note, this is episode 1 of 2 that we did with Carolyn. Our second chat was less than 48 hours after her experience at the Arizona 300 last week, and it'll be dropping very soon. So watch for that one and the conclusion of what we start here. And with that, let's get into it. I think you know what time it is. It's time to run from the norm. Okay, Carolyn, again, thank you for being a sport. We have messed with trying to get this recording going for the last hour. Totally my fault. You're awesome. Thank you for being patient. So let's start this thing out. Why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are and where you're at in the world right now?
Oh, that is a good question. I am living in Bozeman, Montana, and I love it here. It's beautiful. The mountains are a good training ground for running and some vert.
What led you to Bozeman?
Oh, my daughter, Ashley, my oldest daughter, Ashley, she graduated from high school and decided that she wanted to go to Montana State University. And while she was attending the university, I would visit, and I just fell in love with the mountains and started exploring and decided that when my youngest daughter was off in college, I would pack my bags and move on up here. So I purchased a home back in 2020 and moved up here in 2022, about mid-year, and feels more like home to me than any other place. I just love it here.
So you bought it during COVID then?
I did.
Oh my goodness. So we have the shared connection of Bozeman where one of our kids is actually going to Montana State as well, and we've got a second one that's going to be heading that way. But where were you at prior to?
I was in Marin County, California, 5th generation native there, and did the bulk of my training in the Marin Headlands overlooking San Francisco Bay, and beautiful stomping grounds there as well. Lots of good races that happen in Muirwoods and the Dipsy race, and lots of good running there.
I tried to jump on your ultra sign up and peek at some of your past races, but I'm not actually seeing much on there unless I was pulling the wrong profile. So let's take a step back. And what got you into running in the first place? I mean, did you just see an ultra and decide I'm going to start running and ultras are my thing? Or where did that come from?
No, I started running way back in my 30s. I was primarily a mountain biker and met my future husband, and then he was a runner, a really good runner, and he introduced me to it, and I fell in love with the trail running right away, and I never looked back. And so I joined a group in San Francisco called the DSC Runners. It's a long-held running club there, and dabbled in 5Ks and 10Ks, and the longer that I went, the more I fell in love with it. And then I joined a group of runners in the Headlands. And then we started doing a lot longer runs, and some of the folks there were doing actual races. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this sounds like what I want to do. And I started dabbling in some half marathons in the mountains, and it just progressed. I found that it really helped with various aspects of my life at the time. And the more that I ran, the further I could go. And it was quite a nice development for me personally.
When you first started getting more into the running from the mountain biking, how long until you signed up for your first race? And you said it was probably a 5K, something a little shorter?
Yeah, not long, probably within a few months. I was also having children at the time. So my oldest daughter was born, and then we would pack them in the car and go to the race in San Francisco, and I would do a 5K as a way also to get back in shape and deal with the pressures of being a new mom and all the stuff that goes along with that. So not long.
And then how long was it until you got into your first ultra? You said you started running with a second group and they exposed you to ultra, or?
That was a few years later. I continued to run some of the shorter distances and just was intrigued by, I wanted to do a half marathon, and I thought, let me do a Google search. And then I discovered that there were races put on by Pacific Coast Trail Runs, Coastal Trail Runs in Marin County, and they run through Muir Woods, and the Dipsy race run from Mill Valley, California over to Stinson Beach, which is one of the oldest races that Marin County has. Mm. And the more I did it, I was just hooked, just really hooked. And it seemed to me that the more elevation and the more that we went through the mountains, the more joyous that experience was. It just became something I thought about a lot, and navigating new motherhood. And it just really was my place to go to have something that was my own, but also to ease all the anxieties and tensions of life and things that come up. And it was really just peaceful and serene to be out there in the element.
How often were you racing at that point?
I would sign up for maybe 4 or 5 races a year. And at that time, they were just half marathons mostly. And then I thought, gosh, what's next after this? What can I do after a half marathon? So then I tried a 20K, and then I tried a night race that was held in the Marin Headlands, and that was amazingly fun. And I think that was a 15K. So I got used to running at night with headlamps and through the mountains. And
running solo? Are you running with other people?
The racing was with whoever signed up for the race, because they were advertised races. But I primarily at that time trained on my own. I was a solo runner for a really long time. And I would drive from my home in Marin, and I would take 30 minutes and drive down to the coast of just above San Francisco. And I learned the trail systems out there really well. And it's still one of my favorite places to run, the Marin Headlands. And I would just run by myself. And then I got divorced, and it was a really tough time. And I decided that I should probably start running with other people for the social aspect and to not feel so alone. And so I found the Marin Running Club, which starts out of Tennessee Valley, which my great-grandfather had a ranch right there during World War II. And there's this about 1.5 mile path down to the ocean. And there's some remnants of the barn that my grandfather had there. And my father worked on that ranch for a while. So it became one of my favorite places to run down to the ocean and back. And yeah, that was the start of it.
And when we were chatting, I think it was just yesterday, all the days just seem to flow together. But I'm not going to give too much away here. But you mentioned you're not a huge gal. You're fairly petite, and you're putting yourself out there by yourself in the dark sometimes. I mean, were you worried at all about that? And I ask this because, as I told you, I mean, I'm 6'4", big dude, 200 plus pounds. These are things I don't normally have to think about, but it does come up sometimes. Is that something that you thought about, or is it just your happy place and you're going out and doing what makes you happy?
When I started, I was really worried about it, and I didn't really know where to go or the trails and things like that, which is why I sought out the Marin Running Club, because they were really going up into the mountains in trails that I didn't know even existed at the time. And so there was a small group of us, 4 or 5 of us at the time, and then it grew, and I learned all the trail systems. And you're right, I'm about 5'3", about 115 pounds, and it was daunting. It's a scary thing to want to be able to go out into the mountains and feel that experience, and yet wonder, boy, this is probably not a great idea by myself. So
what do you think it was that helped you get past that? Because I think there's some people that would hit that wall and they just wouldn't make that decision, and they won't go out by themselves. What was it you think that gave yourself agency to break through that and get out to have those experiences?
It's hard to define the feeling of going out onto a trail and you're running through the woods and it's so peaceful. You hear your breath and you hear the wind, and there's something very zen about it. And no matter what was going on in my life at the time, I found just peace and tranquility. And that sort of superseded any fear that I had of maybe this isn't a good idea that I'm out here by myself. It really helped me gain autonomy and confidence in my abilities. And it really translated into other aspects of my life. And I found that whatever was happening in my personal life, running was always my anchor. I could use it to straighten out any difficulties I had that I was trying to figure out, personal problems or any events that were happening. It really was my anchor and a place of solace. And it's hard to define, but it just really made things okay for me.
Yeah. It's like when you climb to the top of a big mountain and you're looking out, pictures don't capture it. And it's hard to explain that feeling of being kind of in the middle of nowhere by yourself in a beautiful and peaceful place, and just what that feels like, and that release where nothing else matters. It really is a Zen moment. So, without going too far into the personal side of it, sounds like you went through a divorce, and I've gone through it myself. Not an easy thing to deal with. And you have how many kids now?
I have 3 adult daughters. Yeah, they're all in their 20s, doing really well, actually.
And so how old were they at this time when you're starting to try to find this peaceful place, but also go through this difficult time and be a parent to 3 kids?
They were about 4 years apart, all 3 of them. So I would say between 9, 8, and 12, somewhere in there.
Oh, my goodness.
And so they experienced mom always running.
I'm sure in hindsight, they can look back and see how, as we discussed yesterday, and we'll probably touch on as we get a little bit farther into the conversation, it saved your life in some ways, right?
Hands down, hands down. There was one year in particular that was pretty tough for me that involved my mother. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, and they told us that she only had maybe a month to live. And then at the same time, my middle daughter was diagnosed with a genetic birth defect, and that was within a month of each other. And I found myself wondering how I was going to be strong enough for both my mom and my middle daughter, but also my other 2 daughters, and still work and move through that. And I remember there were days when I'd get out of bed in the morning with whatever demand that I had, with trying to get to the hospital to see my mother, and then trying to get my middle daughter over to a specialist, and just being exhausted. And I found that when I would run in a trail by myself somewhere, I could cry and let it out, because I didn't want to be weak in front of both of these incredible women who I didn't know. I certainly knew that I was going to lose my mother, but I wasn't sure if I was going to lose my middle daughter at the time until we got a complete diagnosis. And it saved me then, literally, from losing my mind. And it gave me such strength, and it's been my savior, literally.
It sounds like it. And you said, what, 5th, 6th generation from the area there? So I would assume you had hopefully some support with your family.
Unfortunately, I was divorced at the time. And then my brother, who lives in Petaluma, which is not far from Marin, and his wife were my anchor as well. They were right beside me. And my brother and his wife were always with me and always very supportive. So I could lean on them, and whenever I needed anything from them, they were there during that tough time.
Oh, that's great to hear. And it sounds like your mom, she succumbed to it.
Yeah, my brother and I, we relied heavily on hospice. And the last 2 weeks of her life, my brother and I camped at her bedside in her home, and we were there for her transition. And it was the most difficult, but yet amazing experience to be there for her in her final moments. And my brother was right there.
I'm glad you had that opportunity to at least be there. Not a parent, but I lost my best friend last year to very quick, aggressive cancer, and he ended up going through hospice, and it was very short. And seeing that, I can understand what you're going through to a point, but I fortunately, I haven't lost a parent yet, so I can only imagine that was heartbreaking. But it sounds like you were able to make it through with some support there. And then your daughter, I think you mentioned she has recovered?
She's made a complete recovery. Yeah. And she's fine and living a wonderful, healthy life. And she got married about a year ago now, and she's actually doing very well. She was a young lady who didn't necessarily want to go to college. And this experience with her diagnosis, she turned to me one day while it was happening to her and she said, Mom, every time we go to Stanford, we have a team of women that helps me. And she said, I think I could be a doctor. And it completely changed the course of her life. So she is currently in grad school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and she's studying medicine. So it seems to me that when we have tragedies, it's devastating, but it seems to me that there is always a silver lining. If you choose it, it's there.
100%.
And she really feels like she's going to be able to help other women because she knows what it's like and has a lot of empathy for this. And so I'm extremely proud of her, and she's working hard to get there.
I was just going to say, you have to be absolutely proud as a parent to see that and see her want so much to give back to others going through something similar to what she had to experience.
You never know how somebody's going to react to a devastating prognosis. And she, without going into detail, she's suffered a loss during it, but she took it by the reins and decided, I'm not going to let this bury me. I'm going to move forward. And she just is 100% motivated to go into medicine. And I'm so proud of her for having the strength and the courage and to not let it bury her. And this happened when she was just turning 16.
Oh my goodness. Still just trying to navigate childhood, growing into teenage years. And wow.
She was so amazingly mature and wise and blew me away. And I would just leave the room and cry. Like, where did this angel come from?
Where did this badass come from?
Seriously. And you're a parent. And so you can relate to this. I am so grateful for having children because they have taught me more about unconditional love more than anything else in my life. They have been my blessings. And I tell them that all the time. They go, thank you, Mama, for being our mom. I'm like, oh, no. Thank you for letting me be your mom because my life is so enriched by having them in my life.
That's wonderful to hear. And so she's still in the valley there. And at what point did it transition to where you had a daughter come out to Bozeman? And what was it about Bozeman that really captured you so much that you were willing to leave this place where you have so much history behind?
Yeah, I can't describe it in real tangible words. It's just a feeling. The first couple of times I came out, my daughter, Ashley, who's my oldest, who was the one going to Montana State, took me up into the mountains here. We went up to Sacagawea. We went to Bridger Mountain.
Beautiful area.
And Sourdough Canyon, and every place we went, I was just like, it couldn't get any more beautiful. And the elevation and the rocks and the trees, it was just mesmerizing to me. And I would come back home to California and I'm like, I want to be in Bozeman.
My wife and I, same things. Every time we go there, it's like, oh my God, we could absolutely live here. It truly is a magical place.
Yeah. And I never thought I would feel at home any place other than California. And now whenever I go someplace and I get on a plane, I'm like, oh, I'm home.
You can't wait to get back to Bozeman. And I mean, you're talking about a radical shift. What was it like going from California to Bozeman, where now in the winter it's freezing cold and you're buried in snow? What was that like?
California girl here, was running around in t-shirts and shorts in December half the time. And I get here, I'm like, oh gosh, I love it in the summer, but this could be a train wreck or it could be
a few layers and a parka.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so I learned, of course, the hard way, all the things that you need when you're outside running in the snow. And what I have found is that it's a different kind of spectacular. As long as I'm warm enough, which for me means my hands need to be warm and my feet need to be warm. So I put in the hand warmers and the toe warmers and I bundle up. And if you're moving, you're generating enough heat, at least for me, to stay warm. And basically, if my ears are covered and my hands and toes are covered and warm, then I'm pretty okay. And then the workout that you get from trudging through the snow is quite good. I can see these ultra distance runners that are top of their game use cross-country skiing for their winter sport, and they don't run as much because it translates for strength amazingly well. I've gotten quite used to running in the snow now, and I enjoy it quite a lot, actually.
And I want to get into some of these races that you've done and some of the races you have coming up. But how has moving to Bozeman shaped you now as a runner?
I had to get used to elevation because I came from sea level.
Hmm.
And I remember the first time I ran up here when I was visiting my daughter. We were going up to the M and I could barely breathe. And she's just running up like it's no big deal. And I was like huffing and puffing, like, okay, honey, I'll catch you in a minute.
Yeah, you're starting at what, 5,000 feet?
Yeah, close to 5,000. And it took me probably the better part of a year to get used to it. I also have asthma. And so I wasn't sure how that was going to translate. But what I found is that it's really helped become a stronger runner. It really has. It took a while. It did take a while for me to get acclimated. But now when I run other places that have elevation, it doesn't affect me. I'm no longer afraid of running up to 10,000 feet because I've done it here. We have a mountain here called Baldy, which goes up to about 10,000 feet. And that is an
Really
excellent,
quick.
really fast. Yeah. The pitch is amazing, but it's such an amazing training ground up there. And yeah, it's made me really strong. So I've done that a bunch of times.
Such beautiful country. When we were up there last, I did that where you run from the parking lot below the M and ran right up the right side of the ridge instead of the left side where you can go up to the M. I hit that right side and went right up over Baldy and kept bouncing across ridges. And it's hard to describe that Bridger Ridge, what it's like being just right on the peak of that alpine where the trail's right on the ridge top. And like you said, you gain so much elevation so fast and looking out on the valley to the right and then over towards the city on your left. And it's absolutely breathtaking. So you have this amazing terrain and all these beautiful places that surround Bozeman that you can explore and run. How do you not get too carried away to where you're overdoing it? And how do you maintain some control over your training, we'll say? And what does, say, a week of training look like for you?
I have, in the last couple of years, really upped my mileage because I'm interested in really pursuing the really longer distances now. So I average probably 50 to 60 miles a week. And then I recently ramped it up to about 80 miles a week. I am currently in taper mode for a big race coming up, but I would say on average, like 50 miles a week, I would say.
And how much gain do you think you're getting?
Oh, gosh. I would say anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 feet, depending on the trail that I've chosen for that day. So, yeah.
You're getting some good vert.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look for that now. Once you get used to it, it's something that you really look for. At least I do. And feels very satisfying to have run up to the M or gone up to Baldy and traversed around it there. And you come back and go, wow, that was really good.
Yeah, it's fun when you're trying to make that last descent coming down from Baldy. If you're coming back down to the parking lot when your legs are already trashed and it's so steep and everything you can do not to just face first and roll down the mountain. But speaking of the M, we were talking yesterday about the 12-hour M challenge. Can you tell me a little bit about that event and your interaction with that event?
Yes, there is a gentleman that lives over in Belgrade. His name is Dan Campbell, and he puts on this 12-hour event twice a year when the clocks go back and go forward. And it's also a food drive for the local communities, which is wonderful. So it's very grassroots. And basically, we start at 6 p.m. and you can go till 6 a.m. And there's 3 routes up to the M. There's a steep route, the one that you were just talking about. And then there's a middle route, and then there's a little bit of longer route. And basically, it's just under a mile to the M with about 870 feet of climbing. So it's pretty steep. And the idea is to do as many loops of that as you can in a 12-hour period.
And it doesn't matter which route you take.
Doesn't matter which route you take. And they have this piece of cardboard at the end with a black marker. So when you come down, you look at your watch and you go, okay, this is the time. And you jot it down and then you go back out and do another loop. So you're kind of on this honor system. And so we just recently did that. It was from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
And how did you do?
I did really well on this one. We started out with about, 12 to 15 people. And when we got to about 2 in the morning, most people had dropped out, except for there was this one other gentleman and myself. And I somehow had one lap on him. He would be coming up as I was going down, and I would clock my time and go back out, and he would be running down, and I'd get to the top and I would turn around and I'd think to myself, boy, I sure hope he didn't decide to come back out again because
I'm getting tired.
And I could stop.
Oh my goodness. I had a somewhat similar experience, except for it wasn't a climb. It was a timed event though. And I don't know if you're familiar with Davy Crockett, if you know that name. He's out of Salt Lake. He does a lot of ultra running history and he's created some websites around it. But yeah, he's kind of a legend. But I had one of those where it was in the middle of the night and I was up ahead of him, and that same thing where you see that light coming at you and it's like you're wanting him to stop so you can catch your breath. But you won it, right?
Yeah, so what ended up happening was I would get to the top and I'd touch the bench right under the M, and then I'd turn around and I would be thinking, "Oh, geez, I hope he's not coming back up because then I could stop."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I would come barreling down. I'd run down as fast as I could, and I'd see him trudging back up, and I was like, "Ah, shoot."
Gotta go again.
So I would turn around and go back up, and then he'd come down, and I'd get back up to the M, and I'd turn around and go, "Oh, please don't be coming back up here."
Oh, geez. So let me ask you, what's your fueling strategy for these? Because I want to ask you about some of these other races that you've done in past and then build up to the one that you mentioned, this big one that you have coming up. But what's your fueling strategy? Do you have something consistently that you go to that works for you, or does it just depend on the event?
It does definitely depend on the length and the vert that you're climbing, because as you need substantially more nutrients and fluids for sure.
Mhm.
I'm now a big fan of GU Roctane gels. I'm one of those who loves caffeine, and so I use the Roctane because they contain the caffeine. So gels for sure. I think on the M loops, I did 10 gels, and I would just routinely, I'd come down after a loop and I'd do a gel. I'd come down after a loop and do a gel. So those seem to digest really well for me. And I love mashed potatoes, love bananas, mashed potatoes, and also ramen. I never eat ramen other than when I'm racing.
Oh, that's the magic. Yeah. Ramen noodles and the broth. That's always magic for me. I have a friend, you mentioned mashed potatoes. Mashed potatoes are magic for her.
You know, it's the simpler it is, the more digestible it is. And it's like quick energy. So I just try and maintain the energy going in. Yeah.
And just water for hydration, or do you take in liquid calories as well?
I do water. I'm not a fan of any of those powders that go into water. My palate gets so tired of it, and I don't know why, but I'm a big fan of, I'm going to do a plug here for Bonsai sparkly water. It's the only sparkly water that I found that just quenches my thirst. Now I buy it by the caseload, I swear. It's amazing stuff.
Is that a local brand?
It's out. Where do they make this? Let's see.
Oh, you must have one in front of you.
Yeah, it's out of Texas. They're out of Texas. So yeah.
Yeah, I do love some sparkly water, some fizzy water myself, but I haven't heard of that one.
So on the M, just to finish that up, we basically ran the clock out. So we were going down to 6 a.m. at the time stop. And I thought, man, I still have this one lap in front of him. I don't think he's got enough time to do another lap. And I think he realized it too. So it was about 5:15 in the morning. I came down and I didn't see him coming back up. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Can finally be done with this. So what was your total overall distance and vert once the whole thing was said and done?
It was, I think I clocked about 11,000 feet of climbing, and it was 32 miles just doing.
My goodness. Just brutal.
Yeah. But, you know, I was thinking about it the next day. I was like, that was so satisfying. It was just so, you know, when you're like, I really want to stop. I really want to stop. I'm really tired. It's cold out here. I'm hungry. And something about the mental game that every time I saw him, I was like, okay, we're doing another lap. We're going back out. Jot your time, grab a gel and go. Don't even think about it. And it's the mental work that you have to do to really get through some of these ultra distances that really intrigues me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's step it back a little bit. I don't think I asked you yet. What was your very first ultra that you did?
I just pulled up my ultra sign up and I just figured out what was going on. You probably looked up under Garriott, and I just realized that my maiden name is where my ultra sign up is. So if you were to Google search Carolyn Cunha, I've got my whole racing, all my races there.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it was. So what was your very first ultra?
The very first one was back in 2002, and it was the Muir Beach 10K. So that's not really an ultra. So let's keep going. So Pirates Cove 20K, which was in 2003. And then I have a lot of races in here, but I started getting into the 30Ks in 2006 and then bumped it up to the Quad Dipsy. I don't know if you're familiar with the quad. So that one is only 28 miles, but it's the elevation that really gets you on that one. So that became my first really hard ultra. And that was back in 2010. I was 9th woman overall on that one that year. And that was good.
So you've been at it for quite a number of years now.
I have. I'm an old lady now. But
no. So I did see something that, let's go to a little bit more recent then, because obviously within that time span, we could spend hours just talking about all the races within that period. But more recently, I think I saw you did the Bandera 100K.
Yeah, that was January.
Okay, and how
Mhm.
did that go for you?
That was quite interesting because 2 days before the race came on, they had such torrential rain in Texas. This takes place in Bandera, Texas, that they had to reroute the course completely. The new course was at a place called Camp Eagle, and it was much more rocky and much more, I think it was much more difficult course because I'd run Bandera in January of 2024. And so this is my second time. And I thought, oh, I know the course. This is going to be smooth sailing, right? And of course, we get there and it's nope, new course. And I have no idea what to expect. So I went into that race thinking, I'm just going to do this and we're just going to see how this goes. I just didn't know what to expect. And my oldest daughter, Ashley, and my middle daughter, Nicole, came and paced me. And it was really hard and did that. I think we had a 50% drop rate.
Oh my goodness.
I ended up being 29th female overall, and I won my age division for that. So I was
awesome. So
yeah.
you did pretty well. I guess I didn't catch that your daughters are runners too then.
Yes, my oldest daughter has really begun to catch the ultra trail bug, and she invited me actually to come to Missouri. This was in February, about a month ago, to do the Queenie Backyard Ultra because I had told her about it, Backyard Ultra that I had done last year and how fun it was. And she decided she wanted to try one and asked me if I would come and do it with her. So she had run 26 miles before, it was her longest run at the Vermont Marathon. And she did very well on that. And then she wanted to get onto the trails instead of pavement. And so the Queenie Backyard Ultra is, if you're familiar with Backyard Ultras, it's the loop course, 4.16 mile loop course. And you just go and you go until there's one person left. And she and I did that together and we ended up tying for second place females.
Oh, wow.
And so she ended up doing 62 miles. And she was a real trooper and she did very well on that. And so that was in February. That was really fun.
What's that like as a mom, seeing your kids get into this and start to, I assume, start to have those kind of mind-blowing experiences when they see what they're capable of and what it's like to get out here and do these things? What's that like for you?
It's beyond words. When you see your child and you see them from babies and they're growing up and they're learning all these things and then they become young women. And she had just graduated from grad school. This is my oldest daughter, Ashley. She just graduated from grad school and had just passed the state exam. So she is now a licensed physical therapist. So she had a month between getting her license and starting her new profession. She had a month in there and I was already blown away by her accomplishment. And then she decides she's going to do this Backyard Ultra and running with her. At one point, she was ahead of me on the course and she was talking to some other runners. And I was just watching her run. And as a mom, I was remembering the day she was born and what I can't believe that I'm here with this young woman who is become such an accomplished human being in her own right. And now she's challenging herself and she doesn't know if she can do this, but she's out here and just going loop after loop. And it's beyond proud. It's watching someone come into their own in such significant ways. And I am so fortunate to be able to witness it, is all I can say. Just witness this person becoming everything that she sets her sights on.
It's probably indescribable to not only witness it, but also be able to be out there and experience what it's like when things get stripped down and it's just you're bare out there. And so you're getting this opportunity as a mom, but then it's also that connection that you get with somebody when you're out in the trenches doing this stuff.
Well, yes. And as a parent, you transition from being their parent when they're younger to becoming more like their mentor. And as they get older and they're maneuvering through their own life. And I remember we were about 3 laps away from finishing what she could do. And we were running down this steeper section. And she just said, Mom, everything is hurting. I said, okay, honey, is anything hurting to the point where it feels like you're injured? She goes, no, everything's tired. I said, okay, now ask yourself how bad you want this, because now it's a mental game. And so I talked her through ultra running. I said, this is what ultra running is. Now the work begins.
Yeah.
Now it begins. And so we got through the next loop and I said, do you want to do another loop? She goes, I want to get to 100K, which is 60 miles. I said, okay, we won't think about 2 more loops. We're just going to think about starting on the starting line. So when they blow the whistle, we'll just get to the starting line and we'll just begin. We're not even going to think about the rest of this loop. And it was a matter of talking her through it. And she was just right there. She never gave up. And to watch that is
What an amazing experience.
just amazing. And especially if it's your own child, you're just like,
Yeah, I can only imagine. So it was not only an amazing experience for you as a mom and seeing your child transition into the woman who's experiencing this and having these kind of mind-blowing opportunities to see what she's capable of, but it's also, this is kind of a training run for you for what you have coming up. You mentioned you're on taper, so could you talk about what you have coming up here in a very short period of time, what that event is, and what your plans are when you get to this?
I am running the Arizona Monsters 300 on April.
300 miles.
Yeah, on April 4th. So I believe that's next Friday we begin. And most of the running that I've been doing, including I did Moab 240 last October, all of the running that I've been doing has been a warm up really for the Arizona Monster. It is the first, I believe, of its length. It's run by Candace, who love her races. And so we'll be towing the line there with 350 other runners. And we have from Friday, they have a staggered start. I'm in group number 2, which starts at 1:00 in the afternoon. And we have until the following Friday. They give us 177 hours, I think, to complete it. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you started from 5Ks and now it's escalated. The Moab 240 and now the Arizona Monsters. So what's your ultimate goal? I mean, do you have something beyond the 300 or what's that look like for you?
That is a very good question. I have my eye on running in Europe. I would love to transition to running in Europe. And the reason why I say that is because the mountains there, they have peaks that go up to 14,000 feet. And I think the tallest I've done is Lone Peak at 11,000 feet. And the thought of challenging your mind and your body, I don't know how far I can go yet. I know we hear that a lot from different runners, but it's really true. The more I do and the harder it is, the more I feel just whole and as a human and just one with nature. And it's hard to describe, but I love the idea of when something gets extremely difficult, that your mind can tell you to continue and you can overcome just about anything if you really set your mind to it. And I think that's an incredible metaphor for life.
Absolutely. And what does it mean to you? Because we talked about this a little bit in our last conversation. To be a role model for people is we're all getting older. We're not as young as we used to be. What's it mean to you to be a role model for people to not give up on these dreams and opportunities as we get farther along in age?
As a woman, I just turned 62. And as a woman, I've noticed that when I go do some of these longer events, there's only a handful of us. And generally, it's 5 of us or less. And there's generally more men in this age category. But I know as a woman, there's a lot of struggles that you deal with through your life. And maybe you're insecure and maybe you don't feel like you can do things. And I know that running for me, especially the longer distances, gives me a sense of autonomy and wholeness. And I would want that for other women, especially, and to encourage not only women, but men of my age group to try hard things, because you'd be amazed at what you can do and how fulfilling it is. And the trail running community in and of itself is such a spectacular place to be. It's welcoming, it's encompassing. They want you to succeed. They help you to succeed when you're out doing a trail race. And it's very fulfilling. And I would just want other people who, if they're questioning, I could never do that, to say, yes, you can do this. And you'd be amazed at yourself and to find that joy. It's like, I would love more people to experience the joy of it. It's joyful and it's peaceful.
What advice would you give to somebody if they were interested, but they didn't know where to start?
Funny you should say that. I just started a beginner trail running group here in Bozeman.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's for older people like 40s, 50s, 60s who don't know if they can run or if I've been running for so many years. I thought when I started running as a woman, especially, I was afraid. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. And I thought it would be wonderful to create a space, a running group where every ability is welcome. If you've never run a step in your life, please come and meet me. We'll have a chat. We'll talk. and we'll start and we'll just begin. And to encourage people, a lot of people, I think, oh, running, I have to go out and run. Not necessarily. You can start by walking.
Absolutely.
And I think if you take the fear away, and once somebody gets out there and starts walking, and then you jog a little bit, and then you walk some more, and then you jog a little bit, and you continue over time, you can run more than you walk. And pretty soon you're running the whole mile that you couldn't even do before. And then that turns into 2 miles, et cetera, et cetera. And literally that's how I began. I began by running very little.
I think you nailed a very important point that I would like to emphasize, because I hear that a lot too, where people want to get into it and they're automatically looking at races and running and training plans.
Yeah.
It's just get out and walk. Get consistent with getting out every single day and walking. And it's amazing the fitness that you can build and the base you can start just by doing that. And to your point, then you start mixing in a little bit of jogging here, a little bit of jogging there, and then it's a mile, and then it goes beyond. I think so many people get caught up in like the couch to 5K, or they see the FOMO, they see the stuff of the ultras, and you start scrolling through Facebook and social media, and it's easy to get sucked in and try to do too much too quick, which either leads to burnout or injuries, which actually leads to a question for you. Have you had any injuries over the course of your running career? And if so, how did you deal with them?
I have. Early on, I was overtraining and I ended up with a stress fracture in my tibia, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just a pulled ligament or something. And I was actually signed up to do Way Too Cool. And I began that race and I made it to mile 11 where my shin bone was just killing me. And I thought, man, I got to pull myself out. It was one of my DNFs. And I went to the doctor, and that was actually, it was a stress fracture and then turned into a much bigger fracture because I ended up running on it and I was in a boot for a while. And mentally, that was very difficult. I was new to running and I was not prepared for how much I relied on running for my mental health, for my anxiety. It was the first time I realized, oh my gosh, I can't go run right now. What am I going to do with myself? And it was very difficult, but it woke myself up to the fact that I have some anxiety and I use running to have that be okay. And running works for me. If I didn't have running, I would find something else. I'd probably mountain bike ride or something, but that was a very difficult time, but it woke me up to that.
What did you do when you had the boot and you couldn't run? How did you maintain sanity?
Not well.
Yeah, I can relate.
Made my family crazy, most likely. And
oh my goodness.
I think I was very moody and I didn't know what else to do. Of course, when you're in a boot, it's like you can't really do much of anything. You can't ride a bike. You can't do anything. And fortunately, bones heal pretty quickly. And within 5 weeks or so, I was out there walking around again as much as I could and started to feel better. But
pretty tough times.
It was I wasn't me.
Do you have a mantra or anything that you kind of spin in your head when you're doing these long efforts?
Yes, and they're different each time. So, for instance, when I did Bandera in January, both my daughter Ashley and Nicole were pacing me, but it was the very last segment to the finish line. My right eye, for some reason, I was losing sight in my right eye, and I don't know what that was about. It wasn't both eyes, it was just my right eye. And I kept telling myself, you're okay. Your daughter's here. You're okay. You've got your headlamp. Just slow down. You're okay. You're okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to get to the finish. So I remember talking myself through it that way.
I always try to go back to be here now, but I'll be going along and it's a small world stuck in my head or something. But I always wonder if people have mantras and something that they go to when they really have to dig deep into the well.
I do remember one of the races, I think it might have been in Moab, and I was telling myself, you can do this. You can do this. You can do this. And I kept telling myself that over and over. You can do it. You can do it. Like being your own best buddy. Like you can do this.
You just felt yourself start to calm back down.
Yeah, because you can go down a black hole fast.
Oh, yeah.
As you know, you've done long stuff and you can just tidy bowl fast. And it's, again, it goes back to that mental strength. Turn it around. You're sinking, turn it around.
I haven't gone past 200 yet, though, so I really wonder what that's like when you get into those distances like the 240 or with this 300 that you have coming up. I can only imagine how deep that gets when you're farther into that, which actually will lead to a question. You're doing it by yourself, but at the same time, you're doing it with support. You mentioned a pacer that's really been impactful in some of these races and helping support and encourage you to some of these really amazing finishes.
Yes, I have a pacer. His name is Brad Kale, and he started running only since last May. So it's not even a full year yet. And
Wow.
he paced me through Moab. And I want to go back to that because I didn't finish Moab. I made it to mile 157, which had been the longest I had run up to that was about 70 miles at one given stretch.
And didn't they change the course last year?
I believe they did change it, and I think they added parts of Geyser Peak on there. I think and it's up there in 10,000 feet, and I think they circumnavigated the mountains to add some on there. But I'm not 100% on that. But Brad will be joining me in Arizona, and we both learned a tremendous amount because he was able to join me at mile 67 of Moab, and then we went to mile 157 together.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, and it was such an incredible learning experience. And what I have found is the main things that stopped me in that race were my feet in terms of pain. And I know how to mitigate the problems that I had there for this next race, but sleep deprivations. But when you're so sleepy, your mental fortitude drops tremendously. That's why you have a pacer that would say, okay, let's get up. We're going to go. We're just going to put one foot in front of the other. We're just going to do this. And I would wait until I got to a sleep station to sleep, which was, I think, a mistake because by the time I got into a sleep station and I got comfortable and then I got back out, I had taken a lot of time to just get comfortable to go to sleep. And I look back at that and I thought there were many times when I was just on the trail and I was drop dead tired and I should have just taken a trail nap.
Yeah.
So going into Arizona, I'm not going to wait for a sleep station. I'm going to drop down to the ground and get in my bivvy and say, wake me up in 20 minutes. I need to sleep right now.
Power naps.
Because the other thing I noticed is that if you're not sleeping, you're also not moving well. You're just not moving well.
And I think it impacts your ability to take in calories, take in hydration, and just your whole rationale is off.
Completely. And that's when I started hallucinating. And that was a whole other ballgame.
The joys of hallucinations. You mentioned your feet, and so a couple things I want to ask you in regards to that. Do you have a specific shoe that you go to time and again? Yeah. Do you have a certain favorite?
I do. I wear the Saucony Exodus Ultra 2 version, not the first version and not the third version, but the 2s. And they fit my feet perfectly. I've never found another shoe that just fits my feet so perfectly. And they have a lot of cushion.
Yeah, as I say, that one's a max stack height one.
Yeah. And I just love the shoe. So when I find them online, I buy 2 or 3 at a time because eventually I won't be able to find them anymore because I think they're on to the 3rd generation. I'm a little worried about it.
I do the same thing. My wife gives me grief. I love Innovates. It's fairly minimal, the one that I really liked running in. And I think they were on sale for $50 a pair on a closeout. And I bought 6 pairs and stuck them all in the corner of the closet just because, they're going to go away. You want to make sure you have them. But
that is absolutely true. It's good that if you find a shoe that's now older, you can get them for half price.
Right. Yeah. I love the sales. But the next question of that is with your feet, you had mentioned, you had some foot issues, maybe hot spots and blisters, and you were really struggling to find the right socks. And so we were discussing a certain sock that you found that works great for you. Can you talk about what those are and where you found them?
Oh, yes. It was 2024 and I was doing Bandera. And I live in Bozeman and there's this farm called Alpacas of Montana. And it's exactly that. They raise alpacas and they have llamas there and they shear their alpacas and they make socks and jackets and all kinds of products. And I saw this advertisement that they had put out, come and pet the alpacas, come and meet our alpacas. So there's this farm that's about literally 10 minutes from my home here in Bozeman. And it's run by this couple who started it about 20 years ago. They were looking to get out of the city and they moved to Bozeman and bought this farm.
And left the corporate world and bought an alpaca farm.
It wasn't, I don't think it was an alpaca farm to begin with, but they were looking for some kind of, they wanted to start their own company and they were familiar with animals to the point where somebody called them and said, look, there's these alpacas that are roaming around. Somebody had abandoned some alpacas in Bozeman and they were running around the hills. So this couple went and rescued them. And so they started with probably 10 to 15 alpacas that they'd rescued. And so those have had babies. And I don't know how many many generations deep there are. But I went to this alpaca farm to pet the alpacas and tour the farm, and it was wonderful. I highly recommend it if anybody's in Bozeman to go to the alpacas of Montana and meet these folks and also their animals. And I was in their gift shop where they sell all their products. And I was looking at socks. I'm always looking for socks. And I bought a pair of their running socks and thought I'll use these for Bandera. And it was the first time I didn't get any blisters in a long distance race. And the alpaca fur is antimicrobial, which means that it doesn't smell. It doesn't hold on to bacteria. And also, it wicks away the moisture so well from your feet that I didn't have any hot spots. I didn't have any rubbing, and I had no blisters. So I went back for more socks after the race, and I went into their gift shop, and I was talking to the gal behind the counter and just raving about their socks. And she said, I happen to be the marketing director. And I said, you're kidding. I said, these are amazing. I said, everybody, all the runners need to know about your socks. And she goes, would you mind being like a spokesman? I said, 100%. I believe in your product. And her name is Jaya. And so Jaya and I, we met and we did a little video. And
I saw that, and it is up on YouTube too. That's awesome.
I said, the hunters need to know about your socks, and the snowboarders and the skiers, and everybody needs to know about these socks because they're really amazing. And they do have other products, and you can go online and buy them direct, and 100% love. They don't pay me anything.
It just changed your game.
It changed my game. And the problems that I had with my feet in Moab had nothing to do with blisters on my feet. My shoes were too tight, and I was running down these big boulders, and my toes were banging into the end of and so I didn't know you could do this, but you can develop blisters underneath your nail bed.
Absolutely. Talk about pain.
And oh my gosh, the most painful thing ever. And so that's what became my problem. It had nothing to do with blisters on the outside of my feet. It was blisters underneath my toenail. And I realized that I needed to bring bigger shoes.
Size up your shoes. Yeah, jump up that half size because your feet they swell so much.
They do. And also, my strategy this time won't be to try and make up time running fast down, anything like that. So much time in these long distance races that you don't need to really race this. You need to
be patient.
You need to be very patient. Yeah.
One other race that I want to ask about here, we've covered a lot of these races here, but there's another one that seems to be getting close to your heart, and that's the Copper Kings 100 in Butte.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you asked about that. Yes. Copper Kings is over in Butte, and it's an old mining town. And Wes Plate, who is a guy who has family there, and he does these wonderful YouTube videos. If anybody hasn't heard of him, please check him out.
Super cool. Once you mentioned him, I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and definitely going to be reaching out to get him on the podcast as well.
Oh, he's real people, and he's so supportive, and he loves the sport, and he has taped and made YouTube videos out of all of his own 200-mile adventures, and they're fabulous. And so he decided, I guess about a year and a half ago, that he wanted they call them fat ass races.
Oh, yeah.
He started doing these unsupported fat ass races, and he created a route in Butte, and he just did it with a couple of his friends and whoever was interested. And he went through the lengthy process of getting permits and all the things you need to do. And this June, he is presenting the first 100-mile race in Butte, Montana, called Copper Kings 100. And I can't wait. It's a lovely man who is going to put this race on. And
I love seeing his videos when he's coming in aid stations and seeing his wife come running out to meet him and kiss and take care of him and stuff. Just seems like a very genuine dude.
He's so genuine, and he doesn't shy away from showing you if he gets sick. He shows you if he's happy. He shows you if he's sad and he's crying. He shows you, and it's all encompassing. This is what trail running really is. There's nothing fancy, but at the end of it, it's just, yeah. And his filming is very good. Oh yeah, this is his race coming up. Can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Carolyn, we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything that I'm missing that I haven't asked you that you want to touch? Actually, you know what? I would actually like you to give a little bit more information about the running club classes that you're putting together. You didn't mention what the title of that is and where people could find that.
I posted it on Meetup, and you can find it in Bozeman, Montana, of course. And it's called Carolyn's Beginning Trail Running Group 40+. So it's really open to anyone, but I'm trying to encourage anybody who doesn't think they can run to come out. And I usually give a description of where we're going to meet, and it's someplace really local, and to come out and spend an hour and talking about running. And we can walk or we can do a little bit of jogging, but it's to encourage people who don't think they can do it to come out, because you really can do it.
Which leads to actually a follow-up question on that. So with running being such a solitary sport, especially with trail running, you're going out there to learn more about yourself and challenge yourself and see what you can do. But the unexpected side effect is the community and this tribe. Can you just speak a little bit of how that has developed for you from something that used to, and maybe it is still this, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that started as something that saves our life. It gets us through these difficult times and helps us find ourselves and find peace and sanity. But what has it meant to you as you've got farther into this, and the people that you've met and the community that surrounds you in all these efforts and events that you've participated in?
I was pretty shy growing up and insecure, and a lot of people feel the same way, and was a loner a lot of times. And when I found trail running, I think it was the first time I felt like, wow, I have found my place. And it is still true to this day that when you go and you run with other people who like to do the same thing, you find in conversation that most people have had tremendous life experiences and hardships they're overcoming. And it is such a way to connect with humanity and support. And you can actually find other people that have gone through what you're going through or currently going through what you're going through. And sometimes you can find support from a stranger that you didn't know was available to you. And likewise, you can find yourself supporting somebody with words or with your own experience. And it's such a wonderful community.
To your point, you said earlier, it's such a welcoming community.
Welcoming. And literally with Moab back in October, we would pull into an aid station, and the aides that were volunteering their time, they would ask you what you need, and they ask you what you want to eat, and can we do something for your feet? Are you warm? Are you cold? Do you need to sleep?
Where else can you find strangers that want to touch your nasty feet in the middle of a dirty race while we're shoving snacks in our face?
And, and I remember one of the last aid stations, and the gal was there. She goes, "You can do this. You're fine. You're good. You can do it." And they want to see you succeed. It's not competitive where you're competing against another 10K where, oh, shoot, I can't even talk to that guy. I need to make sure that I'm just running really fast. And you're talking to other runners who are going through the same thing that you're going through. Man, I'm so tired. Did you sleep? No, I didn't sleep. And you're commiserating. And it's made me feel part of the world in a way that I hadn't been able to find on my own. That's what I'd like to communicate, is if there's people out there that feel like, A, I can't run, and B, I feel so alone in this, is that come out to my meetup and let's talk. Let's have a chat. Let's start, because you'll be amazed at what you can do.
I love that. I think we're going to have to invite you out to what I would call one of my favorite and home races, the I'm Tough 100, the race I've done more times than any others, and it's not far from where we're at. We'll have to get you on the I'm Tough course.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. We'll work on that. Carolyn, you've been awesome. You were very patient as I worked through the technical issues, so thank you for that. And I've really enjoyed getting to know you more, and thank you for letting me ask you all these questions. But I do have one closing question that I would like to ask, and that is, what does legacy mean to you, and what's the legacy that you want to be remembered for?
Legacy, that she never gave up. Always try. Continue. Be brave, and be courageous in the middle of your warfare.
It's going to speak volumes to you as you're tackling the Arizona 300 in a week and a half. That's mind-bending. It's going to be such an amazing experience. We're going to have to connect again, because I'd love to hear all about that and how it goes for you. All right, Carolyn, thank you again so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and wishing you nothing but the best of luck at Arizona and any future races that you've got going on. And we're definitely going to stay in contact, because obviously we're going to be coming to Bozeman again here pretty soon, and we'll have to get you over to our neck of the woods and get you over to the I'm Tough 100 too.
Looking forward to it.
All right, well, thank you so much, and can't wait to catch up with you soon.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you. And that, friends, wraps up another episode of the Run from the Norm podcast. Carolyn, thank you for your vulnerability, your wisdom, and for proving that legacy isn't built by luck. It's built by showing up, lacing up, and never giving up. And thank you, dear listener, for sharing your time and listening to this episode. If you're enjoying what we're doing and want to learn more, please go to www.runfromthenorm.com, where you'll see all kinds of different things that we're doing with this platform. Podcasts, fun blog posts, say that 3 times fast, and even our monthly newsletter where we're giving you a nice little wrap-up of everything we've done and released over the course of that month, as well as some other little extra tidbits and goodies that you're only going to get when you sign up and get that newsletter. It's free and your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. And with that, I encourage you to remain curious, keep moving forward, and get outside and run from the norm.
Check that mic, make sure it sound right, boy.